Hi, my name is Jamal Ashraf. I want to talk about integers and float or decimal numbers today and how we divide them and how does it work in general programming. And I also going to create another video to show how to start editing and compiling programs in Python. So this is going to be two videos right after each other. I'm going to share my screen to start with this. So that's the PowerPoint, and I'm going to submit that one as well. I'm going to start with my PowerPoint, and I'm going to switch this. And I'm also going to create my animation so I can use my pen over here as well. And so let's start with that one. This is basically chapter 2 of my Python class we're talking about the variables, numbers, and those kind of things. So I want to start that we have different types of data in this chapter that we're going to be working on. One is called a whole number. The idea of this one that we have to be careful with is the no fraction part. So that's what we are talking about. So we're talking about no fraction part. So it's a whole number with no fraction in it, like 7, 8, and those kind of things. And then we have numbers that has a fraction part or decimal points. We call them floats. And then we have our regular strings that we are going to be using a lot. Python is very, very comfortable with the strings, and we're using that a lot. So the way that it's happening in Python, it's going to figure out the data type based on the value. So it's going to be checking based on the value. So how does it know what the data type is? It's going to be based on the value, not the variable name. So for example, if we say cans per pack equals 6, it's going to put that as an integer. And if you say 12.0 is going to decide that as a float. And then if I put some string, remember in Python, double and single quote are exactly the same thing, and it's going to be considered as a string. All right. Now, the issue with Python is because it's choosing the variable data type based on the value, we can, in the program, change it to different types. This is something that we have to be very careful. We should not do that because it's going to get very, very confusing. If you set something in a certain data type, keep that in the same way and do not change it. So for example, if I say tax rate equal 5, later on, if I come in and say tax rate equal 5.5, my original integer is going to be changed to float. And if I go back and put it as a string, so I have the same variable, but different parts of my program, it has changed to different data type. We got to be careful not to do this. Python is going to rely us as a developer, as a programmer, not to do that. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to type this one in IDE, and my choice is PyCharm. I'm going to come back and do this. And then we're going to go through the code and we're going to figure out what happens. So in Python, we have addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. That's what we're going to be talking about right now, today. And then we talk about some other things like exponential and other things. Remember that Python is created to be easy. So some of the operation that's not available in other languages like C++ and Java, it's going to be available here, and we see it as we go through it. So for example, if I have a plus b divided by 2 in my math, I have to write it in a way of programming, which is a plus b divided by 2. Now, the reason that we are using this parentheses is because of the operation that we are using, the the order of operation that we are using in math. So if I don't use the operation, and if I do it this way, because division has a higher than plus, then it is going to do this one first before it does the other one. So what's going to happen is it's going to do this one first, and then it's going to add a to it. So we got to be careful with these things. I would use parentheses as much as possible to be sure my coding is properly readable. One of the things we have to emphasize is our code is readable. So we have to consider that as well. Okay, moving on. So another thing that's going to happen in a lot of programming languages like C++ and Java, when we are mixing them up, generally they're going to be promoted to the higher version, which is a decimal point. So in computers, integers take a smaller space than the decimal. So if we move things to decimal, we have more room to play with. If we move it to decimal, the decimal points is going to be removed. So that's something that we have to keep in mind, that if we force a floating point to be an integer, we're going to lose its decimal point. Okay, so what is float division? So if we just divide two numbers together regularly, that's called floating point division. That means 7 divided by 4 is going to give us 1.75, which has a decimal point. Now, if we go with the float division, which the operator is two slashes next to each other, this one is going to take it. Let's go over the division. Okay, so 7, I'm working on this one right here. 7 divided by 4. How do we do it? So if I want to divide 7 by 4, that's going to be 1. 4 goes to 7 in 1. And then I'm going to deduct 4, and I'm going to have a remaining of a 3. So I don't have any decimal points over here. It's just the division, regular basic division. And then in here, when we are doing the float division, that means what? 7 divided by 4, or float division or modulus division, is just going to give me 1. So that is my 7 divided by 4. That's going to be 1. This means what? That we don't have any decimal point. Remember, if I force a decimal number to an integer, it's going to lose its decimal point. So we can think about it two different ways. One is 7 divided by 4 is 1.75, and we're going to lose 0.75, I'm going to get 1. Or we can look at it as this way, that we are going to do 7 divided by 4 is going to give me 1. And the remainder of 3. So integer divided by integer, we are called float division. We're going to receive integer. This is something that we have to get used to it, especially if you're just starting programming. In programming, almost all languages do this, the ones that I know. My background is C, C++, and Java. So in those languages, the division, the integer divided by integer is going to always give you integer. Keep that in mind when you are using this operator, which is called float division. That means integer divided by integer, you're only going to receive integer. You will not receive decimal point. If I want decimal point, I'm going to use this one. Again, this is something we have to get used to it. We're going to try it. We're going to do mistakes, and we're going to learn from it. Something that we have to practice till we get it. And even in the future, we might get it wrong, and then we fix it. So no decimal points when we are doing this kind of divisions. So we have an operator, we call it a modulus. and we're gonna show it as a percent, and that's same thing in Java and C++, and it's called modulus. That is gonna give me the remainder of my division, and it's called modulus. Okay, so we're gonna say 7 modulus 4. We are looking for remainder of 7 divided by 4. If you recall in the previous slide, we divided 7 by 4, we save 1, and the remainder was 3. So that's the way we're gonna get the remainder or modulus. So modulus is the remainder, and our remainder is going to be 3 in this case. Remember, we can only get the modulus if I'm dividing an integer by integer. Because if I put something like this, if I say 7.0 divided by 4, or if I decide that I want to do modulus of this is not going to give me anything. It's going to give me a 0 because it's going to give me the 1.75 and then my modulus is going to be 0. So if I have a floating one, I cannot get the modulus. The modulus is going to work only if I have integer divided by integer. So keep that in mind. So that's called float division, sometimes called modulo divide. That's the one we're going to be calling it this way. So this is another program. I'm going to go over this in another video connected to this one to see how we're going to run this program. I would suggest you just copy and paste it and try it out for yourself to see how is it going to go. And the last one is a little table to go over it. So it's 9n is 1729 modulus 10. So we're going to divide 1729 by 10, and the remainder is going to be 9. So remember the floor division. So if I do n divided by 10, 1729 divided by 10, I will get 172. I would strongly suggest you do this by hand and try it out. Or if you're using the Zybook, do the practices in there. Okay, so the modulus 100. So we are dividing by 100 and we're going to get the remainder. Remember, if I do this divided by 100 normal way, it would give me 17.29. I'm going to get rid of 0.29, so I'm going to get the 29 as modulus and float division as 17. Okay. Percent 2. So I'm going to divide this by 2, and I'm going to get the remainder. Remember, when we're doing the modulus, this is something that we got to keep in mind. When we're doing the modulus, your remainder cannot be equal or greater than this second number. The maximum I can have is 1. The minimum I can have is 0. So if I'm doing modulus 10, it's going to give me 0 to 9. It's never going to give me 10. That's something to keep in mind. If I have a negative number and I'm doing the float division, it's going to give me the negative number of that. So that means what? It will not use float division for negative numbers in this book, because it's basically going to do rounding in there, and it's going to get a little confusing. So we just let it go for now, and then we look at it in the future. Okay, so that's going to end this one. And if you have any questions, any concerns, send me a note, and then we go over it together, or I answer you directly.